Hello. Good afternoon. Here's your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith. The time is 12 o'clock noon, and today's date is Saturday, September 27th. The topic of this lecture today is Covert War. Gang-stalking has many names. It's got gang-stalking, cause stalking, hate stalking, community harassment, and covert war. Upon learning gang-stalking's many names, I picked covert war as my favorite. And the reason covert war is my favorite name that is given to gang-stalking is because I believe it defines gang-stalking more accurately and more precisely than all the other designations. And whether you're here where I am presently in Miami, Florida, or if you're somewhere in Juneau, Alaska, gang-stalking is a clandestine attack mechanism with military functions that targets a person. Now, I've referred to gang-stalking in the past as an undeclared war against U.S. citizens by the state. And here's why. Define war. It is an armed military conflict between two or more belligerent nations. That's it. What are the causes of war? Well, there are a number of causes, but I've identified three primary causes. The first, perceived acts of aggression against one country from another. Two, perceived acts of aggression against the ally of a country by another. And three, mistakes. I'll give you three examples. So, in example one, country one, or we'll call it country A, invades country B. And these will all be hypothetical countries. Country A invades country B because country A wants access to country B's natural mineral resources. Country B is rich in emeralds. Country A is not. Country A wants to plunder country B so it can obtain access to its emerald mines and extract as many emeralds out of country B as possible so as to stimulate the economy of country A through the various products and services that can be offered to the general public through the manufacture of emeralds. Fair enough. Country B doesn't like country A's idea. Country B wants to keep its emerald mines to itself. So when country B sees that country A is ready to begin a military conflict over these emeralds, country B picks up arms and a skirmish ensues, which eventually blooms into a full-blown war between country A and country B over its emerald mines. A similar example of such a war being fought can be traced to the Boer War in South Africa. That war actually came to mind as I was putting together this scenario extemporaneously. There was a similar war fought between two factions in South Africa over gold mines that were present, and there were two rival factions in this particular area of South Africa that wanted control of those gold mines, and a full-blown war was fought over control of those gold mines. It's called the Boer War, B-O-E-R, the Boer War, and it's an interesting series of historical events. I suggest you look it up. So let's move on to scenario number 2. A country attacks an ally of another country, and the other country retaliates on behalf of its ally. So let's say you have country C that is essentially going about its daily business as any country would. People are going to work. People are going to various educational institutions. People are child rearing. People are enterprising, innovating, philosophizing. Of course, you have your retired population, which have earned their right to live day-to-day carefree, and they are attacked militarily in their capital city by an enemy belligerent country via missiles. It causes a catastrophe. The damage is catastrophic. The loss of life is catastrophic. The ally of country C, we'll call it country D, finds out that country F was behind it. So country C takes up arms militarily and flies bomber planes, we'll call them F-16s or F-22 Raptors, or perhaps stealth bombers, over the capital city of country F so as to neutralize the threat. Country D offers country C its support as its ally, which country C gladly accepts, and country D also sends F-16s, F-22s, and stealth bombers over the capital city of country F to assist in the military campaign of retaliation. That's an example of an ally coming to the aid of a country who's been attacked in a warlike maneuver. Scenario 3 is mistakes. Wars have been fought throughout history because of mistakes. You thought you were attacked, but weren't, or you thought you were provoked and wasn't, or you thought that one of your enemies had begun to wage a military campaign against you, but had not. Wars have been fought over mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. Countries have set their militaries in action into military conflicts over mistakes. And a very potent example of this is the Vietnam War. And I'll use a real life scenario for the third scenario as opposed to a hypothetical. Now, the Vietnam War started over a incident between a Vietnamese naval vessel and a French naval vessel. The scenario went something like this. This all happened in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is a body of water that's, I believe it's just off the east coast of the Vietnam state. So, a Vietnamese naval vessel at some point bumped into or rammed a French naval vessel. It might have been an accident. It might have been a poor navigational maneuver. It might have been a clouded plane of view. But anyhow, that happened. A Vietnamese naval vessel rammed into a French naval vessel. The French government reported this as a war provocation to the United States, who retaliated with an invasion of Vietnam to, I guess, subdue the country. And that war led to the cataclysmic casualty rate of, I think, 350,000 U.S. lives lost in that war. I'm going to stop the lecture here at the 13-minute mark and pick it back up for part 2. Back to the Covert War lecture. So, if a state uses its defense capabilities, its intelligence capabilities, its law enforcement capabilities, and financial resources to stage disruptions in the life of a person, that is tantamount to an act of war. Now, I've done lectures in the past about narratives and how narratives are conducive into gang-stalking campaigns. Now, the narratives that are spun about a targeted person during a gang-stalking campaign are a little more than subterfuge. The narratives are false. You understand? Because the stalkers, particularly the liaisons that are strategically planted throughout the United States that have federal authority to do what they do, particularly them, the ones that are psychologically intimate with the targeted person with respect to they have more access to the targeted person's personal data than the actual stalkers that they signal to approach the target. Okay? The liaisons know the vital statistics of the target. It's the liaisons, not the stalkers themselves, but the liaisons, the federal liaisons. They're the ones that have access to the person's name, their address, their phone number, their vital statistics, their proclivities, their inclinations, their daily routine, their height, their weight, skin complexion. Okay, kind of car they drive, their license plate number, where they work, where they go to school, where they go to church, if they go to church, what they like to do on a Sunday afternoon, that kind of thing. Okay, the typical stalker doesn't have access to that information. That information is held by the liaisons that signal the stalkers to the target. The stalkers themselves are what I like to refer to as useful idiots. They lend themselves to the cause of gang stalking. Now, they obviously don't know that what they do is called gang stalking. For all they know, it's called fusion stalking. They don't know what they're doing. All they know is that they have been plugged in sociologically to a signaling mechanism and a mechanism of verbal commands and gestural cues and so forth, vehicular maneuvers that point them into a general direction. And they follow suit. They do whatever it is they're signaled to do without knowing what the consequences are. The liaisons are the one that know the stalker personally. Okay? Now, given that these liaisons operate in a law enforcement capacity or a military capacity, because there are both military and law enforcement liaisons, mind you, I'm in no capacity anti either military or law enforcement. I have two grandfathers, one on my mother's side, one on my father's side, that served in the armed forces. I had a cousin who I used to play basketball with in my driveway from time to time, go to baseball games with he and my younger brother, that kind of thing. He passed away serving in Iraq. And I myself have done semi-law enforcement work myself, particularly from April to August of this year. So I am neither anti-military or anti-law enforcement. I'm anti-gang stalking. And unfortunately, gang stalking has permeated every crevice of federal, state, and local governments, including our Department of Defense, including our Department of Justice, including our judicial system, including our political system. And there are enough people participating in it to where it can actually change the trajectory of someone's life. It can actually change the trajectory of American society. Now, Covert War. It's just like this. If I were to start my own country, yeah, there'd be a military, yeah, there'd be police, there'd be a state, there'd be federal, state, and local police. Why? Because my mindset has always been that the natural behaviors of the human being do not manifest as just. Man's natural inclination is to do mischief and violence. So that's why we need so many laws. That's why we need so many ordinances, so many statutes, so many overarching constitutional documents, so many different kinds of courts of law, so many different kinds of judges, so many different classifications of charges, of criminal charges, and civil litigation. That's why we need so many different courtrooms. That's why we need so many different legal codes and statutes. Human beings are capable of an infinite number of crimes against each other. So you have to have terribly stringent legal codes to contain all of the horrible things that people are capable of. It's just that simple. People are naturally carnal, lascivious, scandalous, violent, homicidal, okay, prideful, opportunistic, okay? Man's natural inclinations are not just. Okay, mankind's natural inclinations are unjust. So in order to make human beings just, we need a justice system. You see? We need to go outside of ourselves to be good to one another. You see? We need to go outside of ourselves to contribute to society. So yes, if I started my own country, yeah, we'd have a military, yeah, we'd have a judicial system, yeah, we'd have law enforcement. But I would not dare take the resources, and I'm speaking as, we'll say, the emperor of my own country. I would not dare take the resources of the state, okay, taxpayer or not, taxpayer resources or not, okay, taxpayer funded resources or not, I would not dare take the resources of the state and use them to level any kind of belligerent activity against one of my own citizens. It's counterproductive. And especially if someone were to try, if a regal authority were to try to implement such a thing in a covert manner, well, that's all the worst. Because once it's exposed, you'll be seen as conniving. You see? Gangstalking is called covert war for a reason. And yes, the implementers of this program are conniving. They are scheming. They are plotting. We can change the trajectory of society through a covert system of interconnected persons who communicate with each other using a system of signals, vehicular maneuvers, verbal commands, and other such gestures. Just think of it. Think of how many supervisors or managers in a company have hired the person that knows the signal as opposed to the person who doesn't know the signal, even though the person who doesn't know the signal is more qualified. Yeah, there are companies that only hire people that know these signaling mechanisms. How dare the federal establishment of this country wage war on me? Now, some people might say, well, are you anti-American? I would say to you, I'm anti-anything that would use taxpayer resources to implement this annoying, thuggish, hostile, ever-present, needless, silly, pandering, and ultimately needless, disgusting, germ-spreading mechanism that involves strangers coming around a targeted person and continually pestering them to no end and for no good reason other than they took a signal to do it. I mean, imagine if the United States federal establishment gave $2 trillion a year to a federal entity that none of us knew anything about, that used that $2 trillion a year to mobilize people who did absolutely nothing all day, every day, but go out into the world and see how many people they could pester. That's exactly what it is. And notice how Congress is keeping their mouth shut about it. The Departments of Defense and Justice are keeping their mouth shut about it. That's because they know how embarrassing this is going to be when it all hits the fan. Some people will say, well, if you were the emperor of your own country, you'd have a military and you'd have a police force. What do you think of the American military and the American police force? Well, the American military is complicit in gang-stalking activities, so I find it deleterious. Of course, there are a few exceptions to the rule there in terms of people who are not plugged into that. And the United States law enforcement mechanism at the federal, state, and local levels is pretty plugged into this gang-stalking mechanism as well. And obviously minus a few exceptions, so I find it deleterious. So if you're asking me, what do you think conclusively of the United States military and the United States law enforcement mechanism in this country, I'm going to say they're deleterious. And the stalkers they send around you are, I'm trying to find words for it. It's easy to lose sight of the proper verbiage for such degenerate, pandering behavior. You know, I'm a man of vocabulary. I like the English language. I like exploring the breadth of it. And I like speaking with confidence when using the English language. But even myself, who am a lifelong English speaker, have trouble at times deciphering what manner of social thuggery this is. And yeah, it is covert war. Because the Department of Defense, which is a military-bred agency, is an active participant in that. And what I refer to as clandestine gang-stalking. And so if the Department of Defense is an active player in it, and it uses military stratagem and disruption tactics, then that is an act of war, period. So I think the title for gang stalking, which refers to it as covert war, it is acceptable and it is proper, okay? And regardless of what you hear in the news, every country on this planet has what might be referred to as illegal weapons. Okay? Every country on the planet has a nuclear arsenal. Some of them were built in the spotlight, in the public eye, and some of them were built in underground bunkers that no one knows about. But every country on the earth has a nuclear arsenal. Every country on the earth has bunker-busting bombs. Every country on the earth has cluster bombs. Every country on the earth has biological weapons. Every country on the earth has chemical weapons. Can a human being be used against another human being as a biological weapon? Yes. I've experienced that quite a few times over the past 8 months here in the state of Florida. And mind you, gang stalking operates without the authority of the governor or the mayor of the state that you live in. They're not the ones in the background pulling the strings on a gang stalking campaign. It is totally a national security intelligence mechanism. And it operates independently of the office of the governor or the office of the mayor. And it's done in secret by law. They were just terrible at making the thing work. And now it's getting exposed on a level that they never thought possible. And mind you, you got stalkers wearing earpieces now. They don't have to take signals anymore. They can be directed towards a person using a small earpiece in which they take direction. Now, ultimately, the goal is to constantly annoy the targeted person and keep them on the defensive. And that can only be obtained, or that goal can only be achieved with numerous people. You might even call it a standing army of signal chucking gang stalkers. And because this standing army has access to military resources and stratagem to achieve a belligerent goal, such as organized germ spreading, in which human beings are used against targeted persons as biological weapons. Okay, a liaison signals a sick stalker over to where a target is sitting with the instruction of doing something with their bodily functions around them to contaminate the air and get the target sick. That's a biological weapon being used. The stalker is the biological weapon, and it is being dispatched by a federal liaison that has access to military stratagem and equipment. That is an act of war. The Department of Defense has a hand in gang stalking and its disruption tactics. That makes it an act of war. Yes, military strategic functions are being used in this country against U.S. citizens by liaisons who dispatch stalkers using a series of signals. And as I've said in previous discourses, I'm not your friend. I'm talking to the orchestrators of gang stalking. I'm talking to the liaisons. I'm talking to the people who participate in the signaling mechanism. And neither is my significant other, Lori. She's not your friend. And because you've waged a covert war against me, because you've waged a covert war against her, we're your enemies. And my platform for fighting against you is online. Because unlike you, I don't have access to military-grade resources and technology. I don't have access to unlimited human capital that I could signal your way and stop you from pestering me. I don't have access to any of that. And quite frankly, I think what you all do is disgusting. And you know what the sad thing is? I've put enough of what you guys do online with pinpoint accuracy to where future generations can look back on this crap you guys have devised and know what not to do in the interest of society and human progress. Now, knowing you all and your military induced social engineering platform, What you all are probably trying to do now is you are looking to eliminate the embarrassment by changing the way you do certain things. You're probably making the signals harder to see. You're probably making the verbal commands and the vehicular maneuvers harder to grasp for the target. You're making everything you do more covert, so you can operate in continued silence outside of the will and the knowledge of the American people and outside of the dictates of the U.S. Constitution. That's what I think of you, and that's what I think of your people. I think you're disruptive thugs. And I can't put it any clearer than that. And I can promise you I will never run out of things to say about your kind. I will never run out of things to say about your mechanism. I will never run out of things to say about what you're doing to people using state-sanctioned resources. And there's something else I'd like to address. My use of the term state-sanctioned murder. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, a legless stalker just hopped by me and contaminated my air. I'm having trouble breathing over here. I gotta move. I'm serious. This dude literally has one leg, and he just hopped past me and contaminated my air. I have to. Just give me a second. That one caught me off guard. But yeah, they'll use legless people to contaminate your air because it catches you off guard. He was obviously signaled to me from somewhere with the expectation of contaminating my air. They are constantly looking to get targets sick. And because military grade stratagem and personnel mobilization tactics are used, this is an act of war. It's called biological warfare, biological terrorism. And it's being perpetrated by the U.S. federal government right now today. Okay? So, where are we at with this covert war thing? I'll tell you exactly where we're at with it. In the 1940s, a man named Adolf Hitler waged a state-sanctioned war against segments of his population. He used military stratagem and personnel mobilization and disruption tactics to capture as many Jewish people and Gypsy Roma as possible. And he ultimately paid the ultimate price for his crimes, because he wanted to exterminate these people because he thought they were politically subversive. It's not to take anything away from the German state or German history. I think Germany overall is a beautiful country. It's just that 10-year period in its history from 1937 to 1947. Some pretty radical things happened in Germany politically. Same in Russia, albeit for a longer time period. When Joseph Stalin took over, the Russian people just knew that this was the ultimate politician. But ultimately, he committed acts of state-sanctioned murder himself. particularly through the Great Purge, where he systematically had potential defectors in his government executed, regardless of their status, regardless of their familial status, regardless of their accomplishments, and regardless of their past loyalty. He had them executed because he believed that they were going to try and overthrow him. State resources were used to execute citizens in the USSR. State resources are being used to execute citizens in the United States of America. This is state-sanctioned murder, and there's no telling how many targeted persons have lost their mortal and natural lives because of this program. There's no telling, and I'm assuming I'm not the only TI. Okay, it's not only organized germ spreading, but it's also derived car accidents. You know, if you had to talk to me 30 years ago at the age of 10 and said, Smith, what do you think of this country? At 10 years old, I'm telling you, I think it's the greatest country in the world. I'm lucky to be here. I can take advantage of my constitutional liberties. I can worship as I please. I can go to any job field I want to and provide for myself. I get to get involved in the voting process and help elect my officials and government chiefs. This country has equal rights under the law, and yeah, great. If you had to talk to me at the age of 20, I'd have told you the exact same thing. But you talked to me at the age of 30. This would have been about 2015. At this point, I'm starting to see the onset of clandestine signaling protocols and how dangerous this onset is to me, especially while driving. And as I move about in places like parking lots and so forth where there are cars. Now at 30, you're going to hear me say something like, well, there are some things that I'm saying that are actually really treacherous. And hopefully the Congress of the United States gets hold of them and repeals them before it gets out of hand. Because some of the stuff I'm saying is the kind of stuff that could make an entire nation go down in infamy with respect to their historical legacy. Don't tell me you're the freest country on earth and put me in a gang-stalking campaign, where a person can be terrorized even in a hospital by total strangers who use a signaling mechanism to get near him. Okay? Don't even try it. All right? Don't call yourself a democracy or a constitutional republic either. Okay? I think what you all do is disgusting and annoying and troublesome, and it's violent. With your signaling mechanism and your germ spreading and your false narrative painting. You know, gang stalkers need false narratives to continue tracking the target. You have to constantly have a reason. So just go off his own actions. He walked too close to that little old lady when she was sitting on the bench earlier. He was trying to intimidate her. Or he actually bumped into somebody on the subway today. That was an act of violence and intimidation. We're going to move in to disrupt. Or when he was walking down the stairs today at the subway station, he almost Oh, excuse me. Gotta clear my throat. He almost tripped and fell and caused the whole pack of people walking down the stairway to fall down. That's an act of massive violence right there. Oh, he visited a Kalashnikov magazine online. He might be plotting a terrorist attack. Or he looked up a history of FBI investigations into domestic terrorism. He must want to know more about that to see how he can get away with something. We're going to move in and keep a close eye on him. We're going to use disruption tactics, and we're going to use some germ spreading as well, guys. You know what? He just looked up something on Frederick Douglass. He must be a black radical. He just looked up Kobe Bryant's stats, his final year for the Lakers. He must be some sort of a black conspiracy guy who thinks that Kobe's death was a huge staged event. Nope, we're going to have to track him. We're going to have to make sure he doesn't do anything wild today, guys. I want you to put extra people on him today, all right? Extra people. We want extra signaling, and I want at least 4 near car accidents with this guy today. 4. And make sure the cars used on this guy, this Smith guy, make sure the cars you use are SUVs. He's a big guy. All right? If there is a collision, I don't want damage to the car, only damage to the target. We used a Stingray device. We got his web history for the day. We looked through his web history. He visited a Wikipedia article, Smith. He visited a Wikipedia article for Sandy Koufax, the legendary baseball pitcher. He must be plotting a situation where he's going to go and find a baseball and throw it at somebody. That is a potential assault with a deadly weapon. We are going to have to stick on him like rice today, fellas. Looks like Emmanuel Smith today visited a website that has to do with agriculture. He must be planning to go out and plant and cultivate his own fruits and vegetables so he can live off the grid. He is probably going to move somewhere like Montana and go set up a cabin in the woods and plant his own fruits and vegetables and fish for his own protein and hunt for his clothing and his protein. He is getting ready to live off the grid, ladies and gentlemen. He visited an agriculture website. He is learning how to do survival tactics. This is a big development, guys. We need to stay on this guy. We do not need this guy moving out into the woods and learning how to fend for himself, guys. That is something that a lot of domestic terrorists do. We must stay on him, guys. And watch how he looks at people. If he looks at anyone weird, this Smith guy, you keep your binoculars on him, federal liaisons. If he looks at anybody weird, I'm going to tell you something. That's an act of violence right there. You cannot look at anybody weird. If he looks at anyone weird, I want you to try and run that guy over with an 18-wheeler next time he goes to the grocery store. Okay, these are the kinds of narratives that these people spin against a targeted person. They will nitpick to a T everything the target does and spin it into some kind of a threatening posture so that that target constantly has a reason to be watched at close quarters. And the thing I've never understood about this gang stalking thing is, why do the stalkers have to come so close to the target? Why is it that all your stalkers have to come within 3 feet of me? If all you're doing is watching me, then why do you have to come so close? 3 feet, that's 36 inches. I mean, they're constantly crowding me. If all they're doing is watching me, they can do that from 20 yards, 50 yards, 100 yards away. They don't need to be right up on me. The reason that they're right up on me is so they have a better chance of contaminating my air with disgusting body functions. And mind you, if you breathe in someone's face hard enough and you yourself are sick, you can contract the bacterial disease from somebody breathing in your face, or yawning in your face, or belching in your face, or sneezing in the general vicinity, or coughing in the general vicinity. Some people's clothes are so dirty, if they wave them at you, it flings bacteria at you. That's why these stalkers keep coming so close. And that's why these liaisons keep signaling them to come so close to me, is because it increases the likelihood that I'll come in contact with somebody who's sick with something. You could easily watch me from 50 yards away if that's all you're doing, and I wouldn't care, quite frankly, because all you're going to see is the truth anyhow. But they don't like that. They don't like operating that way. They're full of hubris. They're full of pride. They're doing gang stalking to make their lives more interesting. What's adventurous about gang stalking if you can't walk right up to the target? Yeah, I could watch them from 20 yards away, 75 yards away, but where's the fun in that? I want to go right to the target, they say. And the federal liaisons say, well, we'll let you walk up to them. Go right ahead. We thank you for your service. This is what we'll let you do. And they let 20, 30, 50, 100, 500 stalkers do that to one person in a day. They signal these people right to your exact location so they can come within 3 feet of you as they walk past. Some actually stop in front of you, contaminating your air, contributing to bacteria, airborne bacteria. Imagine if 500 people in a day walked near or around you at close quarters due to a signaling mechanism. Of course, at some point your air would become contaminated. And that's why they do it. If they come, the closer that these stalkers get to a target, the more of a chance they have of contaminating his air. You can't contaminate someone's air from 50 yards away, especially if all you're doing is watching them. Okay, this is bioterrorism, ladies and gentlemen, and it's being financed by the state, by the taxpayer, under the banner of national security. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen.